Welcome to Preparing to Play Basketball the Bob Knight Way. Basketball's newest frontier involves its oldest and sometimes least understood aspect, the player and his or her body. The area of most rapid development in the sport is the athletic ability of the game's players. Previously held beliefs that basketball players jeopardize their ability to shoot the ball well by engaging in strength development has been disproven. Strength and conditioning are now recognized as among the most important of basic skills. How does your team begin? How do you get your team faster, stronger, in better shape? This video and the accompanying book are designed to take you through the entire strength and conditioning program that Bob Knight's teams use to prepare themselves for championship play. This program can be adopted to any level of play for either boys or girls basketball. It is designed as an ongoing program that players can follow throughout their careers.
Basketball is a game that has changed enormously in the last 10 years. There have been two gigantic periods of change in the game of basketball. The first took place in the mid-1950s, from about 1953 to 1956 or 57, and it involved the use of the jump shot. The jump shot changed the game beyond recognition. Not only did the jump shot greatly increase and improve scoring methods, but it brought about the advent of the dribbler, left-handed, right-handed, change of pace, change of direction. Basketball from 1954 on was never anything that even resembled the game played until that time. And basketball went on for another 30 years, being played about the same year after year. I think perhaps more good players played basketball, more better athletes were involved in basketball year by year. In the last 10 years, though, we've seen a great change in the game of basketball, and it hasn't had a lot to do with the skills of the game. It's had to do with players' athletic abilities, their physical qualities. Basketball today is a game of much greater quickness, strength, and conditioning involving stamina than ever before. Quickness, I think, can be developed. Quickness is partially mental. If we can just get kids to move quicker, if I can just go from here to there quicker, then I'm going to be a little quicker. If I think quicker, it's going to make me quicker. We have to work, though, and do a lot of different exercises, a lot of different drills to constantly make kids aware of improved quickness. The same thing is certainly true for improved strength and conditioning, or as I like to call it, stamina. We need kids that can play quickly, that can react quickly. We need them to be strong, and we need them to be able to play continually over a very tough ball game. At Indiana, we work awfully hard at preparing players to play prior to the season. I think an awful lot goes into the development of your players that has nothing to do with on-the-court work or their involvement with basketball or even the game of basketball, and this is where the overall term conditioning applies. Tim and Frank have done a great job with conditioning for the Indiana basketball program. And as I, from this point on, use the word conditioning, I'm referring to all three of these things: quickness, strength, and stamina. Each has been incredibly important in the development of our teams in any given year. And I think, again, that in Tim and Frank, we have the two best people there are anywhere in the country involved in the development of our players in these critical, vital areas. We can't play today because of the enormous number of athletes involved, the strength of these athletes, unless we have some quickness and some strength and a lot of stamina of our own. And it's something that you really can't develop once the season starts. Basketball, in talking to my summer campers, basketball long since quit being a game that you could play from the 1st of November to the end of March and be successful. You've got to be playing basketball and working at basketball the year round. And I don't think in any phase of basketball is this more apparent or more necessary than in this whole idea of conditioning. Conditioning is a year-round program, and Tim and Frank are going to get into that momentarily. We need strength to be able to defend in the post, to be able to block out, to be able to keep a guy from squeezing through a screen that we try to set on offense. Strength is extremely important to us to be able to execute effectively at either end of the floor. Quickness. I don't think I really have to go into much detail to describe how important quickness is. We've got to have quickness to extend defense. We've got to have quickness to help and recover. We've got to have quickness to fake and drive. This, if anything, describes basketball today. It is a game of quickness. It's being quick with the ball. It's being quick without the ball. Stamina. The conversion game. Some people refer to it as transition. The conversion game is built on stamina. I think conversion involves going both to the defensive end and the offensive end. We convert to defense, we convert to offense. A kid without a lot of stamina is not going to be a good conversion player. There was a time in my career in coaching when I thought basketball was a half-court game. You play defense on one end and offense on the other. But long ago, I decided that tying the two together, offense and defense, is conversion, and conversion of the three phases of basketball, offense, defense, conversion, I rate conversion as the most important. We've got to be able to get back down the floor on defense and prevent the other team from getting easy scoring opportunities. On the other hand, we want to get down as quickly as we can on offense to provide ourselves with scoring opportunities or a chance to go to the free throw line. As I've watched basketball develop over these past 10 years, I'll back up even a little bit before that and say that I was not always a great believer in the development of strength. Tim used to say, well, we got to go lift weights. I said, what the hell are we going to lift weights for? You know, I don't want weightlifters, I want shooters. And I kind of needled him along with this. And really, it wasn't all humor. There were a lot of times when I just felt that we had to eliminate weight work. And I do think that weight work has to be very closely supervised. And again, I think the programs that you're going to get here from Tim and Frank will be exactly what you have to have, regardless of whether you're working with junior high school kids or high school kids or college kids. And I think we have reached a really good level with the involvement that we have as far as conditioning is concerned. Again, conditioning being the development of quickness, strength, and stamina. I think our level of conditioning during the season is excellent. I don't think that we over-condition while we're working at basketball. I think if at any time we overload kids, it's in the spring or the summer or to some degree in the fall leading up to the beginning of practice. But you're going to get all of that in a moment. Suffice it to say from my standpoint that I think the biggest singular thing that we as coaches have to be aware of and have to be involved with is the conditioning program for our players. I'm obviously very fortunate here in Indiana that I've got Tim and Frank to handle this for me. And they do it with, I think, a real minimum of interference from me simply because I have a great faith in what they do based on what they have done for basketball here in Indiana. In a lot of your programs, you're going to have to be the guy that not only coaches a team, but you're going to have to be the guy that is involved with the conditioning. I don't think that you can anywhere find something that's going to be more important to helping you people with what you're going to need in the area of conditioning than this tape. And Tim and Frank have put a book together that goes right along with this tape. Now it's time that all of us in coaching really understood the importance of having your team in the best conditioned state possible. as quick as they can be, as strong as they can be, and with as much stamina as they can have. And now I'm going to let Tim and Frank show you how to do that.
The first step is to identify the goals and priorities of your program. These change during different periods of the year. Conditioning is basically a pre-season activity. Strength training is a year-round process with different intensities during specific periods of the year. Warm-up and flexibility should be incorporated into each workout. Testing of certain physical characteristics is also desirable during the year. All of these activities are discussed in detail in the following video presentation. Before any physical activity is undertaken, each athlete should have a physical examination by a doctor to determine that they are healthy and that the following high-intensity activities do not place the athlete at undue risk. A variety of physical conditioning tests are available to evaluate a player's and team's level of conditioning. We use a treadmill stress test to test our players, but you may not have this available to you. We would suggest that you use a standardized test such as a 2-mile run, a 12-minute run, a step test, or even develop your own test that measures your player's conditioning. For further information, you can refer to the accompanying book. Warm-up is a traditional start of most physical activity. It usually consists of some type of vigorous activity such as jogging or jumping rope. The basic advantage of the warm-up is thought to be that it allows greater tolerance of stretch to the muscles. The warm-up should be intense enough to get the player sweating. This rise in body temperature benefits the muscles and connective tissue as well. The cardiac system and respiratory system also benefit. Proper warm-up is essential to help prepare the body for high-intensity activity and reduce the chance of injury. We begin our warm-up with a jogging medicine ball run, usually 4 or 5 laps around the track. The players run single file while passing a medicine ball between themselves. Immediately following the warm-up, stretching should take place. A warm muscle increases the benefits of flexibility exercises because it allows for greater tolerance of the stretch to the muscle fibers and connective tissue. Increasing the flexibility of an athlete can have many benefits. The greater range of motion that a joint has, the greater the forces that can be produced. Range of motion is especially important in running and jumping. All joints should be stretched before each workout. Stretching may also conclude a workout to maximize the increase in range of motion. All stretches should be done slow and static, never bounce while stretching. We start our stretching with the ankle and work our way up. The ankle calf stretch, which stretches the gastroc and soleus muscles, can be done either against a stable object while standing or on an inclined board. The knee should be straight and the heel on the ground. Lean forward until you feel the stretch take place and hold it for 6 seconds. Then repeat 2 additional times and switch legs and stretch again. When using an incline board, both legs can be stretched together. The stretch should be held for at least 6 seconds and repeated. The quadriceps and hip flexor stretch is often overlooked. The quadriceps and hip flexors are one of the strongest muscle groups in the body. This stretch is started in the kneeling position with one knee extended in front. The player leans forward and pushes the hip forward and downward. Hold this stretch for 6 seconds and repeat 3 times, then switch legs. The hamstring stretch is best accomplished with the help of a partner. Hamstring flexibility is important in running and jumping. Lying flat on the ground, the leg to be stretched should have the knee locked out straight. Holding the other leg down so the hips don't rotate, push the leg backward until the stretch is felt. Hold 6 seconds and release. Repeat 3 times and switch legs. The low back stretch is done lying flat on your back. Keeping the shoulders flat, cross one leg over the other and rotate the hips. Gravity pulling down on the top leg will provide the stretch. Hold at least 6 seconds, then release. Repeat 3 times and switch legs. The groin stretch is done sitting down, knees flexed and feet together. This can be done alone, but is best accomplished with a partner's help. The athlete must relax while the partner exerts gentle pressure downward on the knees. This is held for 6 seconds, then relax. Repeat 3 times. The shoulder stretch is done sitting on the ground. The arms are straight out at the side. The partner grasps each arm at the wrist and gently pulls backwards approximately 12 inches and holds them statically for 6 seconds. Then the athlete relaxes. The arms are then again pulled backward about 6 to 8 inches further than the first stretch, held for 6 seconds, and relax. The arms are pulled backward a third time as far as possible and held for 6 seconds. The arm stretch can be done sitting or standing. The partner grasps the upper arm and the wrist. The arm is overhead, pulled downward on the wrist while pushing on the upper arm. Hold for 6 seconds and relax. Repeat 3 times, then switch arms. Once we've completed the flexibility portion of our warm-up routine, we engage in some sport-specific drills to prepare us for the upcoming running routine. These drills consist of 2 types of activities, either from running or jumping, plyometric drills. The first one we do is the 4-cone drill. This is a drill that is done while in a defensive stance and works on the slide drill. 4 cones are set approximately 15 yards apart in a square. The player moves sideways first, then forward, then sideways, and then backwards, concentrating on sliding the feet without crossing over while keeping low in a defensive stance with their hands behind their back. This is repeated 4 to 8 times. Next, we do the high knee drill, a running technique drill. Over a 30-yard area, the athlete runs straight ahead, bringing the knee as high as possible with each step. This is repeated 2 to 4 times. Next, the high heel kick drill is done. Over a 30-yard area, running straight ahead, the athlete tries to bring their heel up and touch the buttocks with each step. This is repeated 2 to 4 times. Next, the backward run drill is done. Over a 20-yard area, running straight backwards, the athlete tries to move as fast as possible backwards. The athlete must learn to pick up their feet and pump their arms. This is repeated 2 to 4 times. The bound is done next. This is a ground-level plyometric drill for jumping technique. It is done over a 30-yard straight ahead. The first 2 or 3 steps should be regular running steps. Then the athlete pushes off as hard as possible with one leg bringing the knee up high. The emphasis is to take as long a stride as possible, repeating the same push-off and long stride on the other leg. The arm must be incorporated to ensure that the greatest distance possible is achieved. This drill is repeated 2 to 4 times. The hop is next. It's a ground-level plyometric drill for jumping technique. It is done over an area of 20 yards straight ahead. The athlete jumps 2 legs at a time as high as possible, bringing both heels and knees up as high and as far as possible. The arms are also both driven upward at the same time to achieve the maximum height. This drill is repeated 2 to 3 times. The incline rubber cord jump is done next. This is set up by taking a 5 to 7 yard piece of rubber tubing, attaching it high on an object on one end, and securing the other to the ground. It is stretched over a 10-yard area. The players start at ground level and jump back and forth up the rope, jumping as high as possible on the final jump. Rubber tubing is used to prevent injury and encourage the players to jump as high as they can. Attention must be paid to getting the heels up and using the arms. This drill is repeated 4 to 6 times. Stadium hops is the final drill we do. It is often done after the running program is completed. It is done on the stadium steps. Each step is hopped on by the players with both feet. This drill is done over an area of 40 to 60 steps and is done as quickly as possible. Attention must be paid to getting the arms in the proper sequence with the feet. The players walk back down the steps for their recovery period. This drill is repeated 2 to 4 times. This is the conclusion of the warm-up portion of the program. A lot of drills have been covered. Each one of these is included in our daily workout session. The entire warm-up run, flexibility exercises, and technique drills period is designed to take no more than 30 minutes to accomplish. Remember that proper technique must be stressed with each activity. Now we are ready to bring you the running program. The program is designed with the premise that the base aerobic conditioning level of the athlete is already developed. This program is constructed so that the different energy systems of the body that are utilized during basketball are the same ones employed during this conditioning period. This is why the specific distances for the sprints. In the accompanying book, a 16-week day-by-day running program is outlined. Some longer distances are occasionally run to challenge the aerobic system. In our program, the most often run distances are 220-yard or 200 meters, a distance that takes approximately 30 seconds. 110 yards or 100 meters, a distance that takes approximately 18 seconds. And 55 yards or 50 meters, a distance that takes approximately 7 seconds. These times are target times under the maximum time it should take for a player to run that particular distance. Because the players run multiple runs, they should try to run under the target time, but not as fast as they can. Once fatigue begins, the target times will be challenging. A rest time of 3 to 1 or 3 times the target time is allowed after each run. As the program progresses, the target times are lowered and the recovery times are shortened. The running program is designed to last 30 to 45 minutes. Brief, intense bouts of exercise is the key of getting players prepared to play basketball in the most specific and safest way. After the running program is completed and a short rest recovery period, the players usually participate in 45 minutes of full-court pickup basketball games. Coach and player education is very important towards developing a successful strength and power training program. The coach and athlete should know and understand the goals and priorities of your program. As you will see, the exercises that we have included in our program for basketball are for the most part whole body, free weight movements that are performed standing. Many of these movements are also performed explosively. This is because these are the types of movements that are seen in the sport of basketball. We are approaching our training in a sports-specific manner. We have included the following basic exercises as being good movements to teach to a beginner and to build upon to develop a comprehensive strength and power training program. The power clean is one of the most valuable exercises we can utilize to increase basketball performance. It utilizes most all muscles of the body in an explosive fashion similar to what occurs during maximal jumping movements. The power clean, when performed correctly and explosively, will do much towards increasing vertical jump capability. When teaching the power clean, we have found that learning the receiving position first will help the athlete feel more confident when moving under the weight. With this in mind, a good first step in learning the power clean is to first learn the front squat. Notice the hand and feet position. Feet should remain flat with the toes pointed out. Key points of emphasis during the front squat are maintaining an upright torso position with a tight stomach and flat back. Once the athlete feels comfortable with the front squat, the athlete can move to the next movement in the progression. Jumps from the mid-thigh. Using the same width grip as was used in the front squat, the athlete begins with the bar at arm's length standing up straight. The athlete then inhales and inflates the chest while at the same time setting the back in a good flat position. At this point, the knees are unlocked and moving at the hips. Only the bar is lowered to the mid-thigh. The athlete extends the body upward in a quick jumping fashion. Shrugging the shoulders at the top, the athlete rises up onto the toes and into the air, trying to jump as quick and as fast as possible. This movement is only used as a teaching movement and should be performed with an empty bar or very light weights. Power clean from the mid-thigh. The beginning portion of the movement is the same as the jumps from the mid-thigh. As the athlete explodes up in the jumping motion and rises onto the toes, the feet are quickly shifted to the side. The athlete quickly lowers himself under the bar by rotating the elbows around and under the bar. The bar is fixed on the shoulders and upper chest in the front squat position. After the recovery from the front squat, the athlete exhales and then lowers the bar to mid-thigh to begin again. As the athlete becomes proficient at this movement, the coach may increase the weight at his discretion, keeping in mind that attention must be paid to proper technique at all times. Power clean from below the knee. After the previous movement has been perfected, the athlete may move downward to the below the knee position. The beginning portion of the movement is the same as in the previous exercises, except the bar is lowered to just below the knee. Moving into this lower position will require the knees to bend more than before. As in the previous movement, the athlete extends the body by straightening the knees, slowly at first, and exploding upward as the bar moves up the thigh. The athlete receives the bar in the front squat and rises to the finished position as before. The movement from below to above the knee is difficult for some, and extra time may need to be spent on this before moving on to the next progression. Power clean from the floor. This final progression is begun with the athlete assuming the starting position is shown here. Notice the shoulders are ahead of the bar with the back set as has been described. Elbows are rotated out and the feet are flat on the floor. The athlete should be in a balanced position with the pressure distributed evenly over the whole foot. As the bar is lifted off the floor by first extending the legs, the athlete should try to keep the pressure on the middle of the foot and not on the toes. Moving upwards, an athlete should try to hit the positions as before, moving from the floor to below and then above the knees smoothly without pausing. Once above the knee, the athlete accelerates the bar as before, exploding and extending upwards as the bar reaches the thigh. The athlete moves rapidly under the bar and receives it in the front squat position as before. We have discussed the front squat as part of the learning progression for the power clean, but it is also a valuable exercise for hip and leg strength. One advantage of learning the front squat before the back squat is that it forces the athlete to maintain an upright torso when squatting to maintain the correct positions. Without an upright torso, the athlete will not be able to support the weight and will have to drop the weight to the platform. This is another advantage to the front squat in that if the athlete does need to get out from under the weight, he can safely drop it to the platform without injury. The power snatch is very explosive, as is the power clean, and also requires much speed, strength power, flexibility, balance, and coordination. As with the clean, this movement is very valuable for increasing basketball performance. For the purposes of training basketball players, we utilize the power snatch from the knee position. This variation we feel is more specific, safer, and easier to perform for the basketball player than the power snatch from the floor. Due to the long arms, legs, and torsos of the average basketball player, the starting position of the power snatch from the floor is most difficult to perform correctly. We will now show the learning progression of the power snatch from the knee position. Overhead squat. As with the power clean, it is easiest here to learn the receiving position first, which is the overhead squat. This will help the athlete develop a feeling of confidence overhead. Our first step here will be to determine proper grip width. There are two ways of doing this. Here we see the coach measuring the distance between the outside of the elbows with the upper arm held parallel to the ground. This distance is then transferred to the bar, and the athlete should grip the bar so that these marks lie between his first and second fingers on each hand. Here the coach will measure from the end of the arm extended to the side, with the athlete making a fist to the outside of the opposite shoulder. This distance is then marked evenly on the bar as in the first method. Using the snatch grip, the bar is taken from the rack with the bar resting on the shoulders and upper back. The athlete sets his feet at shoulder width. The bar is then pressed overhead with elbows locked out. In the starting position, the athlete takes a deep breath and sets the back. The athlete moves down by bending the legs and continues down to a position where the thigh is parallel with the ground. This approximates the receiving position for the power snatch. The athlete then stands up from this position, maintaining the bar over the ears in a balanced position. The next progression is the pressing snatch balance. The athlete takes the bar from the rack as before. The grip and foot position is the same as with the overhead squat. The back is set, and then as the athlete presses up on the barbell, he will squat down to the parallel position at the same time. It is important that the athlete develop the feeling of pushing the body down and under the bar, gaining confidence and balance overhead. These aspects are important and should be developed before progressing on. The snatch balance is the most dynamic and difficult of the movements used to learn the snatch receiving position. For this reason, it is important that spotters be used in the beginning. The athlete assumes the same starting position as before, except that the feet will be placed at hip width, or what is known as pulling width. The athlete begins the movement by setting the back and dipping the body by slightly bending the legs. At this point, the athlete propels the bar upwards by straightening the legs quickly. As the bar is moving upwards, the athlete quickly shifts his feet into the squat position and punches up on the bar. This will accelerate him into the overhead squat position. Power snatch from mid-thigh. The power snatch involves propelling the barbell overhead with a very explosive jumping movement. It is this jumping movement, as well as the strength required in the upper body for receiving the bar overhead, that makes this a valuable training tool for basketball. The athlete begins by taking the bar from the floor or blocks with a snatch grip. He stands erect and sets the back, and by bending at the hips, only lowers the bar to mid-thigh. At this point, the athlete extends the body upward explosively. Notice the full extension of the body and the shrug at the top. The momentum placed on the bar during this rapid extension will carry the bar upwards, allowing the athlete to quickly shift the feet and squat under the bar to receive it in the overhead squat position. After rising from the squat, the athlete returns the bar to mid-thigh and prepares for the next repetition. Power snatch from the knee. As the athlete becomes proficient at the power snatch from mid-thigh, the coach may now teach the movement from the knee. Beginning with the same starting position as before, the athlete begins by lowering the bar to knee height. It is important that as the athlete lowers the bar, he bends only at the hips and that the lower leg remain vertical with the back set and flat. In this position, the shoulders should be over and slightly ahead of the bar. From this position, the bar is propelled upwards as before, with the athlete receiving it in the overhead squat position as before. Press and push press. These exercises will be very valuable for developing strength in overhead activities such as rebounding and blocking. The press involves starting with the bar in the upper chest and shoulders as shown. As always with supporting weights with the body, the athlete begins by inhaling and expanding the chest and setting the back. At this point, the athlete pushes the bar quickly overhead, locking out the elbows and finishing with the bar over the ears. The bar is held overhead for just a second, then the bar is returned to the shoulders, and the athlete exhales and then prepares for the next repetition. The push press also develops overhead strength, but here the hips and legs provide power to handle heavier weights, providing greater overload and to bring some speed and power to the movement. The starting position is the same as the press. Once the athlete has set the back, the legs are bent slightly, a short dipping motion. This is followed immediately by a quick straightening of the legs, driving the bar up off the shoulders. The movement is finished by a quick straightening of the arms, pressing the weight overhead with elbows locked. As in the press, once the weight is controlled, return the weight to the shoulders, exhale, and prepare for the next repetition. Back squat. Once the athlete is proficient in the front squat, the back squat is easily learned. The back squat is a very specific movement for basketball because the strength developed in these positions is very similar to the strength required to block out, post up, and hold one's position. The bar is taken from the rack as in the front squat, except the bar is resting across the muscles of the upper back and shoulders. Notice the hand and foot spacing. As always, the chest is inflated and the back is set. The athlete bends the legs and moves down into the parallel squat position, keeping the torso as upright and rigid as possible. From the bottom position, the athlete stands up aggressively with a quick tempo of movement while still keeping the torso as erect as possible. At the top position, the athlete exhales and readies himself for the next repetition. Incline press. The incline press is also a valuable tool for developing strength overhead. It is specific to the tasks of rebounding and blocking, and because of this, we feel this is much more valuable to basketball than the flat bench press. This movement is begun with the athlete taking the bar from the rack. The athlete will inflate the chest and hold it for one repetition and no more. The bar is then lowered slowly to the chest just under the chin. The elbows should be out to the side with the back flat on the bench. Once the bar has touched the chest, it should be pushed quickly back up to arm's length with the weight supported over the eyes. At this point, the athlete should exhale and ready himself for the next repetition. Assistance exercises, emphasis on power. Speed squats and jump squats. The speed squat is essentially the same movement as back squat, except that it's performed at a very fast tempo. This movement is very stressful and is not recommended for the beginner. The speed squat can either be performed with a barbell or a piece of equipment called a supercat, as we show here. The athlete begins with the weight across the upper back and shoulders as shown. The athlete stands upright with the weight and inflates the chest and sets the back. The movement begins by bending the legs and dipping to approximately a half or quarter squat, then immediately jumping upward. The speed squat is performed with the feet remaining on the ground and the athlete extending up on the toes. The jump squat is performed with a more explosive jump and the athlete's feet actually leaving the ground. This is more aggressive than the speed squat. Both movements should be performed smoothly with emphasis on quick change of direction. Maintaining a rigid and upright torso during these movements is a must. One must not allow the hips to shoot up and out during the jumping phase or injury may result. The coach must be able to recognize incorrect technique and adjust the resistance accordingly. Step-ups. The step-up is a valuable exercise for basketball, and depending on how it is used can develop strength, power, speed, and balance. We like to use with the emphasis on speed and power as well as balance. This exercise requires a sturdy adjustable box that will allow the athlete's knee to be at a 90-degree angle while the foot is resting on the top of the box. The bar is taken from a rack as in the back squat, and one foot is placed on top of the box. With the back set, the athlete begins by pushing off the ground with the bottom foot. At the same time, the athlete drives up hard with the top leg, extending the knee and hip fully. From here, the athlete moves back down, touching the floor, and immediately begins the next repetition. Performed slowly, this exercise will emphasize strength. Performed quickly, it will emphasize power and quickness. When performed quickly, the athlete should attempt to make a quick change of direction, spending as little time on the ground as possible. Single leg squat. The single leg squat is similar to the step-up in that it develops hip and leg strength and power in a single leg fashion. The single leg squat is started from the position as shown here. The rear foot is resting on a block or plate approximately 2 to 4 inches off the ground. The feet are placed about shoulder width apart laterally to provide stability. The foot spacing front to back should be so that in the lower position, the knee of the back leg is in line with the heel of the front leg, as is seen here. The back is set and the athlete moves up and down in a quick tempo as shown here. It is important that this exercise be performed smoothly with emphasis placed on maintaining a rigid and erect torso as well as quick change of direction. As with the step-up, this movement can be performed with emphasis on either strength or power simply by changing the tempo of movement. Assistance exercises for strength. Lat pull. The lat pull works the muscles of the upper back, shoulders, and arms. This exercise is very valuable for strengthening the muscles used in pulling from overhead, in a similar fashion as to what occurs in rebounding. This exercise is performed on an overhead pulley machine as shown here. The grip is wide and the bar is pulled down behind or in the front of the head. The bar is then returned to the starting position, making sure that the arms are fully extended at the top. Throughout the movement, the athlete should maintain an upright torso, keeping the elbows under the hands. Upright row. This movement is started with the bar held in front of the body with a narrow overhand grip. The bar is then pulled up to approximately shoulder height using the arms and shoulders. The elbows should be kept up over the wrists. From this position, the bar is returned under control to arm's length. Lateral raise. This exercise requires dumbbells and is started with the weights held in the starting position as shown. With the elbows slightly bent, the weights are raised to a position where the arms are parallel to the ground. Notice that in this position that the palms are facing downward. From this position, the weights are lowered to the starting position under control. Tricep curl. This movement can be performed with free weights as seen here or on a high pulley machine. The exercise is started with the bar held at arm's length with a narrow overhand grip. The arms are then bent at the elbow only until the elbow angle is approximately 45 degrees. Here you'll notice that brings the bar near the forehead. The elbow should remain in throughout the movement. The weight is then pushed back to a straight arm position, making sure that the elbows do not move out. Bicep curl. This movement can be performed with either dumbbells or a barbell. The starting position is as shown using an underhand grip. From this point, the weights are curled up to the shoulder. During the movement, the elbows should remain close to the side and push slightly forward. Once the top position is reached, the weights are returned to the starting position under control. Leg curl. This movement is started with the athlete laying on a leg curl machine with the ankles under the rollers and the ankles just off the end of the pad as shown. With the hips remaining on the bench, the weight is raised by curling the feet back over the hips. The weight is then lowered back to the starting position in a controlled manner. Reverse crunch. There are many abdominal exercises that are valuable for basketball. We have included the reverse crunch because we feel if performed correctly, it works both the upper and lower abdominals. These can be performed on an inclined sit-up board with the starting position as shown here. Notice the hip and knee angles are approximately 90 degrees. From this position, the hips and knees are pulled up in an arc to a top position over the head. It is important to always pull from the abdominals throughout the movement. The difficulty of this exercise can be increased or decreased by simply raising or lowering the height of the incline board. Back extension. This exercise is very important for maintaining a strong and healthy back and should be included in every workout. The back extension can be performed across a bench as shown here or on a special back hyperextension machine. Here we see the athlete using added resistance. This should only be performed by more advanced athletes. Once the athlete is in the correct starting position with hip bones just off the bench, he will arch up using the back muscles until the back is parallel with the ground. At this position, the athlete moves back down slowly to the starting position. Gripping exercises. This movement is simply any movement that will strengthen the muscles of the hand, wrist, and forearm that will be used in gripping and grabbing. There are many movements that will accomplish this. Here we show you one we use. Plyometric exercises. Plyometric training is used to improve power and speed in the hips and legs for increased performance in jumping and movements where quick change of direction are important. Ground level plyometrics. We will begin with ground level plyometrics, which are the least intense and the appropriate starting place for a beginner. The impact placed upon the athlete's body will be limited by the height of their own jump. There are many ground level exercises that can be used. During the performance of these movements, it is important that the athlete must put forth maximal effort during each jump to receive the most benefits from this type of training. It is important that athletes perform these exercises on a forgiving surface such as a gymnastics mat, which is shown here. Proper footwear is also important. Basketball shoes would be appropriate. Squat jumps. This movement is very similar to a speed squat except no weight is used. Notice the maximal extension and quick change of direction. Split jumps. The split jump involves pushing up with the front leg hard and quick to gain as much height as possible on each jump. Again, notice the quick change of direction at the bottom and the maximal extension at the top. Knee tuck jumps. This jump involves more impact upon landing and greater force to overcome because the knees are pulling up during the jump. The arm action involves punching up to approximately eye level during the jump with the thumbs up. This will help maintain balance and provide more upward momentum to the body. The athlete tries to pull the knees up to the chest, and upon landing, the emphasis is on getting off the ground as quick as possible. Box jumps. The use of boxes helps to add intensity to plyometric exercises by adding to the height of the jump. Due to the increased intensity of these exercises, it is important that athletes have a good base of strength training before beginning, especially in the hips, legs, and lower back. It is our feeling that an athlete should be able to perform a parallel back squat with a minimum of their own body weight approximately 6 times before they begin box jumping. Due to the intensity of these exercises, it is recommended that this type of training be performed only once or twice a week, depending upon the athlete's level of development. It is important that the boxes are sturdy and stackable, with padding around the edges to avoid scraping the shins in case of a slip. Straddle hops. This is a good beginning exercise for athletes to get used to working on the boxes. It is performed in place on a low-level box. Notice the arm action, full extension of the body, and quick change of direction at the top. Hops. Here we see our athletes performing hops on and over boxes of moderate height. Notice the quick tempo of movement with emphasis on spending as little time as possible on the ground. Again, notice the arm action, which is important in maintaining balance. Failure to use the arms in this fashion will result in the athlete rotating forward too much. When jumping over the boxes, it is important that the knees come up to avoid catching the toes on the box. These movements can also be performed on a single leg. The same guidelines apply as to quick tempo of movement and change of direction. The single leg jumps are more stressful due to the force of the body weight being received on one leg instead of 2. Speed jumps. Speed jumps involve jumping off and on the boxes in place as quick as possible. The arm action is important here also. Depth jumps. The depth jumps have the potential to be the most stressful type of plyometrics. This is based on how high the boxes are that the athlete is jumping down from. Much care should be used in applying this exercise. Much more strength is needed in the hips, legs, and back than was necessary for the ground level jumps. It has been recommended that the athlete be able to perform a parallel back squat with at least 2 times body weight. Again, notice the quick change of direction getting off the ground. The athlete must be able to demonstrate proper form upon landing and jumping. If the athlete cannot land in a good quarter squat position with flat back and chest out and be able to come back up off the ground quickly, then the height should be reduced. Medicine ball jumps. These jumps are performed with a medicine ball of between 4 and 8 pounds held overhead. It is recommended that the athlete step down from the box and does not jump down because of the injury potential of jumping down with weight. Medicine ball training involves the use of weighted balls between 4 and 16 pounds. These weighted balls allow us to perform specific resistant movements safely that we could not perform with dumbbells or barbells. As with plyometrics, the emphasis should be on quick change of direction and accelerating the resistance throughout the range of motion. Rotary throws. These throws utilize the muscles of the torso that control rotational movement. Notice that the power comes from the rotary movement of the hips as well as the midsection. The ball should be thrown fairly flat and should be caught in a yielding fashion, followed by a quick throw and follow through. Chest pass. This movement is similar to a chest pass in basketball. Again, the ball should be caught in a yielding fashion, followed by a quick change of direction, ending with a snappy throw and follow through. Overhead pass. The overhead movement is performed as shown. Emphasis is on the quick, snappy throw. Medicine ball drills on the court. There are several drills that can be performed on the court that are very specific to basketball. The first of these is what we call medicine ball post-up. This involves a pass into a player posting up. The player, without dribbling, must go up and dunk or lay the ball off the backboard. This is repeated several times, as is seen here. Players who cannot dunk a medicine ball may do repetitive touches off the backboard with the medicine ball. The key here is getting back off the ground with maximal effort on each jump. If a player can dunk, this is a good drill to challenge him to dunk every attempt without missing. Adjusting the weight of the ball will allow the coach to change the emphasis between strength and speed. In order to properly evaluate your strength and conditioning program, you must incorporate some type of testing to determine if you are accomplishing what you set out to do. Not every activity must be tested to determine progress, but every aspect, speed, strength, power, and flexibility must be reviewed. Before we test any specific movement, we first look at what changes have taken place in the body as a whole. We test body composition in 2 different manners. One, we evaluate the percentage of body fat that the player possesses. At the same time, we monitor the body weight of the athlete. These 2 measurements indicate what general changes have taken place in the athlete's body. As body fat decreases, we have a higher level of lean muscle mass. If body weight increases, then body fat should not also increase but remain the same or decrease, again indicating an increase in lean muscle mass. These measurements should be taken frequently. Next, we test for speed and quickness, key components of basketball play. The half-court sprint is a test of starting speed and acceleration. It can be self-started or started on a coach's command because of the short distance it should be electronically timed. The full-court sprint is a test of running speed. It can also be self-started or started on a coach's command and should be electronically timed as well. The shuttle run is a test of quickness. The player must start and stop quickly and change directions. It is done by touching each foul line, end line, and center court line. Testing for vertical jump height is a test of power and jumping technique. There are many different tests for this activity. The one we use tests technique as well and is easily measured. We first set up the testing device and determine the player's reach. They must stand flat-footed and reach as high as possible. Once the reach is measured, the athlete is allowed as many attempts as desired to jump, allowing short rest periods between jumps if desired. During the test, one foot must remain stationary while the other foot may move. Testing for flexibility may be done for a number of muscle groups. The most important for basketball is the low back and hamstrings group. This muscle group is tested by the sit and reach test. The testing device is easily constructed of a box and ruler. The knees must remain flat and the hands should be together. Bouncing is not allowed. The athletes are given several attempts at tests. The hand dynamometer is used to evaluate grip strength of the players. Grip strength is important for controlling the basketball. Each hand is tested several times. The device is placed at the side and squeezed as hard as possible. The chin-up test is a test of upper body and arm strength and endurance. The palms are facing toward the athlete. The legs should be kept from swinging and the arms should return to a nearly straight position. The total number of chin-ups accomplished without stopping are recorded. The incline press test is a measure of upper body strength. The multiple 2 to 4 rep maximum test should be attempted in younger athletes instead of the traditional 1 rep max. More advanced lifters may use the 1 rep max test. This test must be properly spotted and proper lifting technique must be employed. The back squat test is a test of leg and hip strength. It should only be done with a spotter. A multiple rep maximum of 2 to 4 reps should be used for younger athletes instead of the traditional 1 rep maximum test. The knee should be flexed to the point where the front of the thigh is parallel to the ground. Proper technique is important in this test to avoid injury. The power clean test is a test of power and includes almost every joint in the body. For younger athletes, it should be done from the hang position instead of from the floor. Proper technique is needed to avoid injury.
Championship basketball in Indiana has been a result of a lot of things. Shot selection, good ball handling, screening on offense, a defensive foundation, paying attention to what the hell is going on in the ball game, and certainly the equal of any of these has been the conditioning of our players. Their quickness, their strength, and their stamina. And there just aren't any easy routes to having a well-conditioned team. A team that reaches a level where it is getting the absolute utmost out of its quickness, where its strength has been fully developed, and where its stamina is at a point where it can endure the toughest of games. I think you've now seen what can be done with conditioning in your own program. You have to believe in it. You have to work with it just as hard as you expect your players to work. Again, going back to something I said earlier, there was a time when I kind of shrugged my shoulders at conditioning. Never again. You know, I'm a guy like a lot of you. I'm a one-time skeptic, at least to a degree, about conditioning. And there's nobody that believes to a greater extent in the conditioning of players than I do. Good luck to all of you. I hope your teams are as well conditioned as they can be, because if they are, then you're going to have the best team you can possibly have.